I promised you guys in my previous video that I am going to teach you how to critique a research article, and that is what we're doing in today's video. So if that sounds like what you're looking for, then definitely keep watching. So guys, welcome, and in today's video we'll be talking about how to research oh, sorry, I said research, how to critique a research article. And I mentioned in my previous video on how to conduct a literature review that this would help tremendously in achieving that purpose. So if you have not seen the video on how to conduct a literature review, make sure to check it out. It will really help you because it's a very detailed video. So now let's get into conducting a critique of a research article. And the main thing I want you to take away from this introduction part is that critiquing a paper means you want to define the strength and the limitation of that paper to help you decide if it's a very good research article or if it's not. So if they ask you if a paper or a journal article or a research article is good or not, you can't just, it's not a simple yes or no. It involves you taking into consideration several steps that were taken, because the research is not just a one-way step, it's several steps put into place. So you analyze each part of that report to decide whether what was done was justified. It was basically, you want the strength to be more than the limitation. That is what I I I understand by critiquing a paper. So I have mentioned also in my previous video on critical analysis that critiquing doesn't necessarily have to be bad. It means you're considering all the factors that you have in place. So it can be either good, it can be bad, and it might not even be anything at all, but it is worth mentioning. So to critique a paper now, you want to understand what has been done. That's the first thing. When you understand, oh, this is what this person did, now compare it to the gold standard. There's always a gold standard for everything. So now you, for every topic, if you understand the why, you will understand the how, which is the main part. The how is the main part of this presentation, and then you understand the what, and that is what is expected, which is what would happen, how you will carry it out, what you would say. So if you understand the why, you understand the how and the what. And the why is conducting a critique help you assess that paper, whether it is good or whether you should use it or you should not use it. It helps you determine its validity, its reliability, its reproducibility, so many things it helps you determine. But then the main thing in this video is how do you even carry out that critique. So it's the how part we're going to focus on. So now let's get to that how part. I don't want to waste any time or bore you with unnecessary details. Now I have decided that these are the things you're going to look out for. If you pick out a research paper, there are different sections, and this almost all the sections. So I grouped it into two elements, which is element A and element B. And the reason why I did that is the element A part is the believability part. Let me name it as the believability part, which is the part where, excuse me, whenever you want to skim a paper or an article, this is the part you usually just always skim through to determine whether okay, it's worth reading at all. So you have the author, the title, peer review, abstract, and the writing style. Then for the element B, you have all the other details, which is the robust part of the uh, article. So therefore, we're going to group it into these two elements, and then I'm going to tell you what to look out for under each subtitle that will tell you that will help you critique that article. So for the element A, you have the title. The title of the paper in question, is it clear? Is it accurate? Is it unambiguous? What do I mean by this? When you read the title, can you guess what the whole report is all about? If I read the title that says exercise as a means of weight loss, I already understand that in that article, all I want to read about is how exercise affects weight loss. So is it accurate, straight to the point? And then is it unambiguous? Is it something that is achievable, not something that is just so massive that you're like, would they be able to carry that out? Is that even possible? Do you get? So how clear is the title? Then that leads me to the authors, or the author or authors. How qualified are the authors? Now, what do I mean by being qualified? Say, for example, you're reading an article, or you want to check out an article on cancer, the medical part of it, the clinical part of cancer, and the research was done by somebody that does web designing. You get the point. That questions the whole, how do you expect somebody who does web design to actually conduct uh, a research on the clinical aspect of cancer? So you query that, like, that's the limitation. Is the person learned enough to even carry out such a research? Now you want to know if the article has been peer reviewed. This actually improves, is a strength. If it's been peer reviewed, then that's perfect. That means if a learned person as well has also read it and approved of that literature. Almost all journals always put it that they are peer reviewed. When you check a literature and article, they always write it there, peer reviewed, which is an added advantage, stating that a learned person has also checked it and has seen that, okay, the strength of this paper outweighs the limitation, and then the paper actually qualifies to be published. Now you look at the writing style as well. How was it written? Was it structured? The grammar that was used, were they correct? So all these things, was it concise, not just merry-go-rounding or perambulating about the topic? Was it concise? All these things are the things that you look out for when you're writing. Now let's look at the abstract. The abstract part of an article is what people always read when they are skimming to determine whether they will pick that paper and add it to the literature they want to review or not. So it has to give a clear overview of what the entire paper is all about. So is the abstract doing that? And it shouldn't be too long. When I wrote my masters, my abstract was 300 words. So for that thesis, I only had 300 words of abstract, but it had to contain the necessary details that will give an overview of what the whole article is all about. And this includes the research problem, the sample, the methodology, the findings, and the recommendation. You have to put all that in your abstract so that whoever picks up is able to determine whether that is something they want to add to their literature or not, but at least they get the whole point. Now to the element B part of it, which I said is the robust part. That's the part that contains most of the things that um, the article is all about. So you want to see if the purpose or the research problem is clear. Like, was this clearly stated? It has to be clearly stated and clearly identified, so that when you know the problem, like, this is the problem, this is what we're researching about, and then you see, oh, at the end of it, was the problem, was it like was the problem, was it clearly stated? You need to understand that if the problem was clearly stated, then the literature review part of it, you also have to check that to see if it was well structured. Do you get? I have a recent video on how to conduct a literature review. If you're interested, it's quite detailed, so you can check it out. So this literature review, was it well structured? And was it critically analyzed? These are important things. Like, these are important things that you have to look out for. And the literatures that were used in the literature review, how recent were they? I am of the school of thought that literatures that should be used in literature reviews should not be more than a decade old, except in situations where you want to define a concept and the original definition was done a long time ago, like 1960 something or thereabout, and that is the only time I think you're allowed to use or to reference something that old. And then still under the literature review now, this articles that were used, were they mainly primary research or were they empirical? What do they mean by this? Primary research are like research that are conducted primarily, but empirical are like systematic reviews, secondary research. So I think it's best if you have both primary and empirical research in an article. It actually shows the diversibility, or like how diverse what's it called, how diverse the sources are. The diversity helps, like it helps to show that it's not just a one-sided thing. Do you get? So you have the research problem clearly written out. So this is the problem. You have the literature review also pointing at that same problem and analyzing or using that literature review to generate the hypothesis, which leads me to the next point, which is the aim, the objective, the hypothesis, and the research questions. That means, were they clearly identified? Were they clearly stated? Does it reflect the information from the literature review? Because you can't have an hypothesis. The hypothesis is always based on all the literatures you have put together, because you have identified a problem, you have put up literatures to back it up, and then you have been able to generate an hypothesis from those literatures. So you can see how it follows each other. So you check, was it clearly stated? There is no way you have a research that won't state all that. Was everything that we've mentioned, was it clearly stated? Was it clearly explained? So if it was, that's a strength, and if it wasn't, that's a limitation. But I want you to understand that there is no bad research. You're only assessing, when you're critiquing, you're only assessing the strength and the limitation of that research. You're not saying whether the research is bad or the research is good. You're just saying, oh, this research has a lot of strength, it has lots of limitation. Do you get? So now you also go to the sample. The sample now in question is the population. Like, let's say you're conducting a research on girls. So that means girls are your sample, like they're the population. Now you can now cone it down to maybe girls in a particular area, and even in that area you can still cone it down to girls within the age of this maybe 5 to 10 in a particular area. So that's your target audience. 5 to 10-year-old girls are your target audience. Now you will determine, you check that article whether they wrote how they actually chose the exact sample size they used. Was there probability or not? The whole essence of this is, if there was probability, then that shows that the possibility of bias is limited. But if there was no probability, then there's a possibility of bias. Do you get? So all these things are what you would include. If probability was done, then that means that's a strength. And if there was no probability, that's a limitation. And the sample size that was used, was it adequate? So there is a way to calculate sample size. You can calculate whether the sample size they used in that literature is sufficient enough to even draw a conclusion. And then the inclusion and exclusion criteria for that sample size, like, okay, these are the people that can be included, these are the people that can be included based on certain criteria. It should be included in that article. So you have to check it out to see whether those were included. If they were included, then that is a strength for that particular article. And then that leads me to methodology. Methodology is the study design clearly identified. That's one thing you want to determine. Is the study design clearly identified? Study design can be different from, it is the study experimental, is it quasi experimental, is it retrospective, prospective, cross section, as in there are several. So which one was it? And the whole essence of knowing it is to say, okay, if it was cross-sectional, you can state the advantages and the disadvantages as well, but you're not saying whether it is bad or it is good. Although most people believe that the gold standard is randomized control trials, but that doesn't mean that randomized control trials apply for all research. It might not be the best for some forms of research, you get, but then you still have to state what type of study design was used. And then when the study design was used, what instrument was used to gather data? So how was the data gathered? by instrument now, it doesn't have to be a physical instrument. It could be a software, it could be something was used to gather data, and that is what you call, whatever is used to gather data is what you call an instrument. And now this instrument in question that was used, was it stated there how reliable or how valid this instrument is? And then you can determine that based on several things. Okay, what does validity mean? Let's even start from there. Validity means that the instrument is able to measure what it is made to measure. Say for example, a weighing scale is used to measure weight, so that means it is a valid instrument for measuring. A weighing scale is a valid instrument for measuring weight. You don't expect a weighing scale to measure waist circumference. Do you get? Now, what does reliability mean? It means that when you conduct a research or a measurement, another researcher can come, all circumstances being equal, another researcher can come and do that same measurement and get the same result with all circumstances being equal, all circumstances and arrangements being equal. Do you understand? So now this instrument, you want to check whether this instrument has been calibrated, meaning anybody that uses it will get the same result. That is what you want to achieve. And then, was a pilot study done to check, to check the instrument and to assess how accurate the data that you're recording is? Do you understand? So you want to state all this, whether it was done or whether it wasn't done, or whether what's it called now, whether from another thing is those that are carrying out the researchers that are recording the results, were they blinded? What blinding means in this case is that, are they aware whether an individual belongs to the research group or belongs to the control group? Do you get? If there's blinding, then that means possibility of bias is reduced. But if there's no blinding, then that means there is a possibility of bias. So those are the things you will include in your critique. So now that takes me to ethics. The ethical part of research is actually very, very important. All research can be cancelled if the ethics is wrong. Like, were the participants fully informed? Was there informed consent? And then, were they promised confidentiality? Was it guaranteed? Everything they say is in confidential. You can't put their name, you can't put their details. It's not possible. So, was it confidential? You have to state all that there, whether all that was written in the article. And then, before even conducting the research, was ethical permission granted from the appropriate body? There are several bodies that grant ethical permission in different countries or in different states. So was the appropriate permission, was it sought, was it given? And then, were the participants protected from harm? What this means is that you're not allowed to administer any form of treatment or any form of research on an individual if you know it's going to cause them harm. You can't give a drug that you know is going to kill a person in a research. It is unacceptable, it is not ethical. So all these have to be checked out in the research. Like, was that written? Did they detail it? And note that if you check out a particular a particular aspect of a research and you can't find the details you're looking for, include it in your critique that you checked out this aspect and you can't find the necessary details, which should have been. It is also part of the critique. Then next, you have the results. I say result the results or the findings. Now for this part, because I'm actually basing this on a quantitative kind of critique, so what type of data and statistical analysis was done? Did they use the right one? There are several, so which one is appropriate for the particular research that was that particular research that was carried out? Was it the appropriate one? And then the sample size that was used, they need to give a detail. If anyone left the research, it needs to be stated, and the reason for leaving needs to be stated. Everything needs to be broken down. The number of male, the number of female, the number of people that started, the number of people that dropped out, reasons for dropping out, all this has to be included in that article. So you have to state whether they are included, and that would be a plus on the side of on the article if all this were put in the article, which means it's quite detailed and extensive, which is a good one. And then the significance of findings was stated, like everything that was seen, the significance of it. Was it written? What's the significance of the what's it called of the data and statistical analysis that was done? And then that would influence the discussion. So now for the discussion, were you able to link it back to the literature review? Because from the literature review, we proposed an hypothesis. So for the discussion part, you want to state whether the hypothesis is actually supported, ticket, or not. So that part can only be linked back to the literature review. And then when you check the discussion, was this done? If yes, you state it in your critique. And if no, also state it in your critique. The strength and the limitation of the study also has to be included in the article, and then that will help your critique. Was the strength and limitation, or were the strengths and limitations discussed, and were recommendations made? Recommendations in this case could be that the researcher or the article could show that, okay, this particular area needs to be researched more, or there's a need for further investigation of a particular. Those are recommendations that can be made, or even a recommendation for a different topic entirely can be proposed. So were all these included in the research, that would show that the research is extensive and detailed. Do you understand? And then lastly, the references. References are extremely important. I can't overemphasize that. Like, you can't write your work and not reference it well. And because I have stated before that academic writing involves you resting on the shoulders of giants that have gone before you, so you need to respect those giants and put their names there, because it's not, you didn't formulate everything, so you need to put their names there so that you can give credit to whom credit is due, and then everything can be traced. So were the references, were they the appropriate type? Because they are different. Was it Harvard referencing? Was it MLA? Which one was it? Was it Chicago? Which one? So was it done appropriately? Was it numbered, or was it in alphabetical order, which is also important? And were they the right one? Were they well dated? All that should be checked for references. And if you can do all this, if you want to critique a paper and you follow this guideline, I promise you that it's going to be a distinction. So one thing I want to do is this, because this video is already about, right now is about 23 minutes plus, which is quite long, and I don't want to bore you out. If you want me to give you an example, to pull out a research article and then critique it, you need to leave that in the comment section telling me that you want me to critique. Just pick a research article from maybe Google Scholar, and then I critique it, or we critique it together openly, and then you can understand further what I'm talking about. But if you follow this guideline, be rest assured that you're covered. Okay, so let me know in the comment section, and I hope so far you have liked and subscribed to my channel. If you haven't, please do so. I would really appreciate it, and it would also help for other people to benefit. It will help other people benefit from this video, because YouTube will be able to show this video to them if you like or subscribe to the channel. It tells YouTube that this is a very good and detailed content. Okay guys, so thank you for staying with me this far. If you have any problem, or if you have any query or question, or if you think I have succeeded in confusing you more, just let me know in the comment section and I will clarify it. Alright guys, so till I see you in my next video guys, make sure you put a smile on somebody's face. Bye.